Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by Prosper Trading, where you can stop gambling on games you can't control and start trading the markets you can. I am Jim Coventry, and of course, as always, I'm going to go over this week's reactions, week 14. Pushing this out right now, an exciting day of football. But before we start our 5 instant reactions, we will first talk about injuries. Oh, I got to set this up. Sorry about that. Fix the way the camera's going. I had my screen behind me. All right, so let's go forward with Patrick Mahomes. Word I got, RotoWire site, Mahomes tore his ACL in a loss in a game where the Chiefs were eliminated from playoff contention, and now Mahomes ACL. Recovery as it goes. If you say 9 months, that puts us pretty close to the August mobile quarterback. Hopefully he's able to play next year, but very difficult injury. And Travis Kelce, don't know if this is the end of the line for him. Be weird to see it end that way for those two. Don't want to go on a limb and say that's what's going to happen. Not predicting anything. Just, as a football fan, it's been a great run for those guys. And a lot of people hate the Chiefs because they've been in 3 straight Super Bowls, and before that they had more success. And I get all that. But never good for fantasy for real football is to see great players get injured. So best to Patrick Mahomes, of course. Not that he's listening to the show. He's got bigger fish to fry than this. Davante Adams. So he'd been dealing with a hamstring issue, and I was worried about it. I was very worried about that hamstring issue. I mentioned on Start Sit show. I mentioned on the XM show yesterday. I was really nervous. I said, Adams doesn't look quite right. He's missed some practice time and really concerned about it. And then he was running a deep route, and he pulled up and laid on his face for a minute. And I don't know if it's a serious injury, but I know they have a Thursday night game against Seattle. And that if Adams really was in the level of pain he was at when he was lying on the turf, you have to think he's going to be hard-pressed to make it in on Thursday. Again, I speculate. Not a doctor. Just watching it on TV, just a guy watching on TV. So hopefully Davante Adams as well. But if he were to miss time, obviously huge injury for the Rams. Christian Watson suffers a chest injury, ruled out not too long after it. So a little concern there. They play the Bears next week. So we'll see what happens there. And see, Uncle Ted mentions Jacobs was also hurt. And I was wondering, again, 5 games in a late window. I'm watching all 5 of them. I'm doing notes on the first 8. So, yeah, I kind of was wrong. I didn't see anything on the RotoWire site about Josh Jacobs, but I noticed that Chris Brooks was in on the passing downs. So we will see what happened there because I was a little surprised no Jacobs. So, yeah, we'll see what's up there. But now Green Bay will be playing the Bears next week, and we'll talk about Green Bay later, so I'll hold that fire. And then Woody Marks sustains an ankle injury. Not sure if he could come back or not. I didn't see any updated note on it. I know that the Texans were in control of the game, even though the score may have looked like it wasn't completely, whitewashed, but it was. And so I don't know if Marks could have returned or not. So we'll find out more about that later. Devin Neal injures his knee. Audric Estimate and others finished the game. If you use Neal, he scored a touchdown. So injuries. But the big ones, of course, Patrick Mahomes, and we'll see with Davante Adams, which brings us now to instant reaction number 1. The Bills pull within 1 game of the Pats for the AFC East lead. Bills 35, Pats 31. Bills go to 10-4. The Patriots, of course, 11-3 with a 1-game edge. Patriots could have sealed the division. If they won, it was a 3-game lead with 3 left. They would have had a sweep against the Bills. Nope, not anymore. Now they have a season split. They're 1 game apart. Now we have a race with 3 games left. We will see how that definitely shakes out. But look, give the Bills a lot of credit. The Bills did what very good veteran teams do. They were losing this game early. They were down 21-7. They were down 24-7 at the half. And it's funny. And, I don't really listen too much to the announcers. That was one of the games I actually had a little volume on. And everyone said, oh, the Bills are a second half team. Well, yeah, any team that's trailing is a second half team. But they were right because the Bills came roaring back in this one. And it got wild. And we'll talk a little bit about each team. But it ends up 35-31. What a wild, wild score in that one. So as we look at that game, the Bills, so Josh Allen only attempts 28 passes. They run 37 times in a game they were trailing 24-7 at the half. What a game. James Cook, beautiful performance. 22 for $107, 2 touchdowns. Not enough. Catches a touchdown pass as well. 2 catches, 4 yards, and a touchdown as well. Patriots defense, I have never been sold on them. I never once said this was a good defense. I think this is one of those defenses. If they play an offense that has a couple of good weapons, they are going to have massive problems. I don't see anything special with that Patriots defense at all. End, full stop. That's it. So, Patriots, you're going to make the playoffs. If you hold on to things, you might get, well, I won't say bye because now they're behind Denver. So we'll see how that all shakes out. They might not even get that. But that said, the Patriots, your schedule was tough this week. Your schedule's going to be tough in the playoffs. It's been great all year. The great story. Very good team. But I do think there's a problem. And this shows the lack of experience. And how do you get experience? You play in these games. And so are you expected to... And I'm speaking to the Patriots. I'll get back to the Bills' offensive side in a minute. So, you got to gain the experience somewhere. And these big games, obviously, are coming up now. And for the Patriots at home to drop that big lead, hopefully Mike Vrabel can find a way to learn something from it. Don't know if that experience is going to take time. But this is one, come playoff season, they're going to remember this, and it might not be in a good way because when they have a lead, it might be like, uh-oh. So be careful here. But let's talk Buffalo. Josh Allen, as always, I say this all the time. I don't draft quarterbacks early, but if you do, this is why. 28 pass snaps, who cares? 3 touchdowns, only 193 yards, who cares? Because he also runs for 48. So Josh Allen, he's had a couple of weeks that haven't been like maybe trying. So what? Because you're crushing it with Josh Allen. So Allen and Cook been a very nice duo. Those who stacked those 2 players, that was definitely very, very good for you. And you could have done that if you drafted Allen early. Well, it would have been tough because Cook was like, well, depending how early you drafted. In some earlier drafts, he was 4th round. He moved to the 3rd round, like later in draft season. But anyway, that great there. Receiving room, Dawson Knox continues to get the job done. 2 touchdowns. Now, I pointed out in the pregame, I had Kincaid ranked like a tight end 8, but I had a red downside tag on him. He's only playing about 33% of the snaps. And he saw his usual 4 targets. He gets 3 to 6 targets in every game. And, he normally gets enough there. I believe one of those targets did get him inside the 5-yard line, but it didn't get him over the line. So he missed the 6. But Dawson Knox, 2 touchdowns, same amount of targets as Kincaid, but Knox plays a lot more. At this point, if you're trusting Kincaid, you are hoping there's a big play and you're hoping there's a touchdown because the 2 to 6 targets is not a big number. And Dawson Knox being on the field and now playing at a productive level, it's going to be somewhere else for Josh Allen to look. But that receiving room, now Shakir did okay here. 5 for 65 on 5 targets. He did very well against New England back when they met in Buffalo. Shakir now, remember, in 3 of the last 5 games, he had really meager yardage totals. He had that big game against Houston. But Shakir right now, you'll take the 11.5. This was a spot where you would have put it ranked about, wide receiver 36 to 40, and he got you that. He definitely got you that. But it does remain dangerous because of those 3 recent low yardage games. There really isn't anybody else you're considering playing on this team for fantasy. They're throwing passes to Brandon Cooks, 3 targets to him. Ray Davis got a one target as one. Ty Johnson's been the number 2 all year, but he gets 7 touches, 4 rushes, 3 catches. So he's not really a big factor for fantasy at all. So yeah, really, it's just Allen and Cook, and then you see if you take a shot at Shakir. Now Dalton Kincaid is getting nerve-wracking with him. He's almost falling to that place where he's a tight end streamer. And then the New England side. So Drake May comes up and starts sit questions, but it was against like people like Mariota. I'm like, you can't sit Drake May for a low end streamer type or a mid range streamer type. No, and Drake May shows you why. The passing numbers weren't good. 14 to 23, 155 in the pick. But yeah, if you started him, you got 43 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And on that alone, you got 16 points alone on that, plus the passing yards. You lost a little bit for the pick. So again, may not always have a great ceiling. But the reason you rank these quarterbacks higher is because you often have that high floor. And there's a lot to be said for having a floor. And there are more outs for a player like Drake May. Travion Henderson, wow, couple long runs, 14 carries only. That's all right. 10 yards a pop. 448 yards and 2 touchdowns, chipped in a couple passes for 13 yards. Travion Henderson took advantage of that Buffalo defense. Great young player. Looked the part today. Very excited to see him play so well. Ramondre Stevenson, actually, 6 rushes and 3 targets. He did quite a bit of damage with that. He had 77 yards. Again, taking advantage of matchup. In terms of the passing game, I just put it this way. If Mac Hollins is your leading receiver, 4 for 41, your passing game is probably going to have a bit of an issue for fantasy. Stephon Diggs, 3 for 26. They led early. Probably didn't need him. Late, thought they might want to find him more. Christian Benford, the top corner for Buffalo, was out. I don't really know. Again, so many games going on. I got to rewatch. He had 4 targets where Mac Hollins had 8. I know they wanted to push the ball downfield probably, and that was probably a focal point of the game plan. But to leave Stephon Diggs out of the game you ultimately lose, yeah, probably not the best decision. But I'm not a coach. Sitting there on the sideline, so there's that. Kayshon Boutte got 1 downfield target, caught it for 30 yards. That was all. And I was worried about this. Mac Hollins, once Boutte came back, Mac Hollins isn't going away. He was always playing a high snap share. He blocks, but he gained the trust of Drake May. And so now the problem is Hollins is a downfield threat. Boutte's a downfield threat. And now Boutte's not getting all those downfield threats to himself. He's sharing them with Mac Hollins. And so it's very problematic. Hunter Henry, 1 for 18. Hopefully you weren't starting him. Ranked him well outside the top 12 times. He started out great first 5 or so weeks, and since then it has been a bit of a problem. But again, Bills, congratulations, 10-4. They are right in line because they still can't afford to drop that division because it'll be road games all the way. And typically Buffalo's not quite as good on the road as they are at home. Hey, every weekend, millions are bet on sports, hoping to beat the odds. But here's the truth. The house always wins. With trading, you're not betting, you're building. At Prosper Trading Academy, we give you the tools, the education, and the live guides to actually create an edge. You can control your risk, compound your wins, and trade alongside real pros every single day. Stop gambling on games you can't control. Start trading the markets you can. Visit prospertrading.com/roto today and take your shot at real financial growth. All right, instant reaction number 2. The Rams drop 41 points on the Lions. Rams 41, Lions 34. The Rams go to 11-3. They have that big game Thursday night against Seattle. Hate that that's on a short week. Lions 8-6. The Lions are 2 games out of the 7 seed with 3 left. And to say I know the tiebreakers right now, I don't. Tiebreakers will probably be coming a little more play as we get closer. But basically, the Lions aren't going to be able to do much losing the rest of the way because they are in deep, deep, deep trouble as we get ready for the playoff run. Still have a chance, but yeah, 8-6, that hurts them right now. Anyway, in this game, Matthew Stafford, if you start him in fantasy, it stung because he had 2 passes that ended up as receptions inside the 5-yard line, which means Kyren Williams banged them both in. Blake Corum did get a touchdown. It wasn't quite at the goal line. Stafford throws for 2 touchdowns, but man, razor's edge from being 4. Anyway, if you started Kyren Williams, you're happy with that. Matthew Stafford, 24-38, 368, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He ran for 2 yards. Big game on the ground for Stafford. Normally gets you 0. So, but all that said, Stafford threw a pick early. Came right back. Puka, we'll talk about in a minute, just incredible. Even Devontae was playing a good game. It was really, really rolling here. And, shame on me. I didn't think anything of Colby Parkinson. Again, I just think he's a guy, if they happen to some targets away, well, he got 7 targets, and he did score a touchdown late when Adams was out. Nakua may have been out for that play, too. Nakua left with cramps. So I think both of them were out, and Parkinson scored a 26-yard touchdown. So Parkinson gets 2 touchdowns, 5 for 75. If you were smarter than me and you started him, congratulations. Yeah, a great game. Even Davis Allen, 3 for 16. But we go back. So Stafford, the big game for Matthew Stafford. For fantasy, it could have been a little bigger, like I said. But Kyren Williams benefits from those 2 carries at the goal line, scores both, but even did great on the ground, 15 to 78. That Lions run defense used to be great last year. This year, not a great run defense. You definitely can get to that run defense of the Lions. It is not close to what we've seen in the past. Blake Corum does it again. 11 carries for 71, and he got a touchdown. So, again, if you had the mind to start him, he's had 3 big games in a row. I want to say it was 82 yards 3 games ago. He went off for like 120 last week. He had 2 touchdowns last week. 3 straight games, he's gotten you at least 13 PPR points. Insane on limited work for Blake Corum. Hard to think that level of production on that few carries is going to continue, but who am I to say it is not? Because, look, teams got to defend the pass, and definitely the running backs are in a great spot for the Rams. Puka, oh my goodness. Again, he left with cramps. He's fine. He's on the sideline late in the game. 11 targets, 9 for a $181. Now, look, this is no shade on Puka. He's a superstar. Puts up the best numbers he puts up with any other receiver in the game. But he's smart. Took advantage of a Lions defense, down 2 safeties. Terry and Arnold's been up front. Doesn't matter. The Cougar been facing a good secondary. He still gets it done anyway. So, but Matthew Stafford obviously just understands. Got to get the ball to Puka, and great things happening. Wow, just the breaking tackles, the yards after the catch. Just what a wonderful player to watch. Great game here. 2 straight games in a row. Plays Seattle on Thursday. Hope he can continue it there. Did mention Davante Adams, 4 for 71 on 9 targets. He did leave with that hamstring injury. As a lay person, as I said, I am nervous with a Thursday game as to what his status is. Hopefully, it was not as bad as it looked. We definitely hope that is a thing. But yeah, Davante Adams, 4 for 71. Other than that, not much else to say on the Rams side other than they look great. I tell you what, until late in the game, the Lions, who scored 34 points, it was hardly any targets to anybody except Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. And I have to look at the halftime numbers because I have to say a good deal of their damage was done in the first half. But I have to look at that to see for sure. But it was huge. Amon-Ra goes 13 for a $163 and 2 score on 18 targets. Jamo 7 for a $134 and a touchdown on 9 targets. And it was very clear. Dan Campbell's smart. He's like, you know what? Got my 2-star receivers. We got to get them the football. Now, to compound it, they didn't try to run. They ended up in the game with 20 carries, but in 41 pass attempts. But it was less balanced on that in the first half. And I thought when I broke this game down, I thought Gibbs had a real advantage on outside runs, and they really didn't get him started. He never got in a groove. So anyway, I said St. Brown goes off. It was 41 PPR points, and then even Jamo got you 26. So you're beautiful there. And I didn't mention Goff, who throws 25 of 41, only took a sack, was hurried a lot, but he did well despite the pressure. No picks, 337 and 3. So wonderful game for Jared Goff. If you started him, you definitely were happy with that. The rushing attack, not as great. Jahmyr Gibbs did not have the game you wanted. 13 for 38, just about 3 yards a pop on the ground. 4 catches on 7 targets for 20 yards. So you're looking at it all day long. You're looking at 58 yards, 4 catches, 9.8 PPR points for Jahmyr Gibbs. Hopefully you had a bye week if you have him, so you didn't have this game sitting there. But this was obviously the receivers going off, the running backs didn't. David Montgomery. I told some people that he was a borderline start, and they didn't run him much. 7 carries, 32, but he got a touchdown. So funny enough, Gibbs gets 9.8. Monty gets 9.2. 9.2. I don't think anybody's arguing about 9.2 fantasy points. I don't think. Montgomery, yeah, he had a target, didn't catch it. So all that said, the only other catch besides Gibbs, 4 short catches, we had a 15-yard catch in there. The only other catch besides St. Brown, Jamo, and the few from Gibbs, Khalif Raymond caught a 20-yard pass. Otherwise, that was it. Target for Tesla, nothing. Lions, it was a very, very valiant effort on the road. They definitely were looking to push it offensively, and they did. This is a dangerous team. It remains that way, and they are certainly fun to watch and certainly fun to invest in for fantasy. But this was great. 75 points. That's what we want to see in that late window of games. All right, everybody. Dabble is just another DFS app. It's the ultimate social platform where you can connect with other fantasy sports lovers. Dabble lets you win big. You can win up to 5,000 times your money this football season. Starting with Dabble's easy. No, new users, they get $25 free when signing up. No deposit necessary. Check out the link in the episode description below to download dabble now. All right, everybody, we got instant reaction number 3, and I'm going to call this one Jacoby Brissett is inevitable. The Texans win, and all the credit goes to the Texans. But I got to start out with Jacoby Brissett here. First of all, Texans 40, Cardinals 20. Texans go to 9-5, and the Cardinals fall to 3-11. Cardinals are in the running so they can get that maybe can get that one, but get a couple of 2 losses. I don't know if they'll get there, but certainly would help them if they did. Jacoby Brissett playing Houston. We know Houston is a lights out defense. On the outside, you got Stingley, you got Lassiter, you've got the edge rushers, you got Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter. The Cardinals were down their left tackle, Paris Johnson, and their left guard, Evan Brown. This could not have looked worse. And even with the Texans getting out to a lead, you would think that would even make it worse because now they could just send people. Now, they don't normally blitz a lot because they don't have to. Jacoby Brissett still gets it done. Now, the person who got it done first, I said Brissett was the tagline. So Brissett, again, 40 pass attempts because they're losing, 27-40 against Houston, 249, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Ran for 6 yards, usually runs a little bit more. But to say that you're going to get, 25-ish fantasy points close to that against Houston, this is the 9th start Brissett's made. I think 22 points is his worst fantasy game. Worst in 9 games. With a line that's not great, and today Miss Johnson, with in-and-out personnel on the field, and Jacoby Brissett keeps getting it done. Unbelievable in a positive way for Brissett. I did not recommend to start him this week. I had him outside my top 12 quarterbacks. I thought the matchup was way too difficult to see it happening. And now let's get to the receivers. Speaking of inevitable, Trey McBride. This wasn't a great matchup. This wasn't like the worst tight end matchup in the world, but it was not a good matchup. McBride gets targeted 13 times. This is all through the game. Early, middle, late. Catches 12 of 13, 134, and 2 touchdowns. 37 PPR points against the Texans. 37 PPR points. For those who draft tight ends early, that was one that you were going with what we talked about in these shows. You benefited. You didn't take Bowers. You took McBride. If you went with that logic, that was a huge, huge win. Michael Wilson. I told people this way. I ranked him as the wide receiver 22. I said he's going to get volume. And volume's king in fantasy football. I say that most weeks. And I also said, though, like you understand about the matchup. The matchup was difficult for his quarterback and for Michael Wilson. Wilson got off to a slowish start. But in the second half, when they had to score points, caught a little less than half of his 11 targets, caught 5, 54 and a touchdown. So again, 16.4 PPR. Very solid game. Nobody's upset about that. But Michael Wilson continues to get done. Now, I say this. Marvin Harrison now don't know when he's coming back. If he's coming back, I don't know how significant heel injury. He's missed 2 games already. As long as Harrison's off the field, I don't know how I can rank Michael Wilson as anything less than a top 10 wide receiver. And it might be a little higher than that. I don't know how I do. He's double-digit targets every game. This was his worst game by far, and it was 16 PPR points. When Harrison comes back, we could see a bit of a target hit. Maybe at this point, maybe that's not an issue. So Michael Wilson has been incredible for fantasy and continues in this horrible matchup. Houston won, but we go second because the story really was the amazing fantasy production from these Cardinals. Oh, by the way, Bam Knight left with an ankle injury. Michael Carter leads with 14 carries and 4 catches. Now, DeMarcado was active, but only had 1 carry and 3 targets. So I don't know what the deal DeMarcado is. And I imagine if we're going to see Bam Knight miss time, I imagine if DeMarcado is healthy, he does move to the top. But again, you got to consider Michael Carter in your PPR leagues because when they trail, and I know DeMarcado's a passing down back too, but just keep an eye on it for waivers. I don't know why DeMarcado didn't get work, but if Carter's still in your waiver wire and you need somebody, just grab him. And then if there's news on DeMarcado, you can always dump him back. Houston side. Houston did not have to throw the ball a lot here, but they threw it 29 times and they ran 33. And that when you take out the 6 quarterback runs, which includes Neil Downs, I'm sure, it was pretty much 50-50. maybe this was a game where the Houston coaching staff wanted to get the passing game going, because I liked C.J. Stroud for fantasy this week. We weren't going to get a big pass rush out of the Cardinals, and we certainly had the ability to throw the ball, and Stroud did. 260 and 3 touchdowns, long early catch and run, 57 yards to Nico, had other chances for touchdowns. Actually, we'll get to one in a minute. There was no time in the red zone. They just came short of one. But again, this was one of the better fantasy games for C.J. Stroud. It worked out well. The running game. So Woody Marks leaves with an ankle injury, 7 for 30 on the ground, caught an 8-yard pass, but he recovered a fumble for a touchdown. Hopefully, your scoring system accounts for fumble recoveries as touchdowns. And if that does count, then that's a really good day that you got that. Otherwise, but if it didn't count, you end up with 38 yards and 1 catch. But if it does count, you end up with like 10. So you definitely take that for a player that left the game early. In relief, it was a big lead for Houston. Jahar Jordan comes in, had a 50-yard run, goes 15 for 101. Look, Dare Ogunbowale isn't going to do much. 5 carries, 2 yards, 3 catches for 32 for Dare. If Woody Marks, and I have no idea if he'll miss time or not. If he misses time, Ogunbowale is going to see some passing down work. He will probably be there, the other pass. But Jahar Jordan caught 2 for 70. But I still think it'll be Ogunbowale serving like as a hurry up receiving back. And I think Jahar Jordan will get his chance. And now it'll all be matchup dependent. Okay. Arizona defense isn't good. So there goes without saying. And it was a good balanced offense, but Jordan will be a priority waiver ad until we know more about Woody Marks. But anytime a running back's out there that could see this level of work, that is an important fantasy ad. Nico Collins only got 4 targets. Fortunately, 2 of them were touchdowns, 3 for 85, 2 scores, including that early first quarter one. So Nico Collins on very limited work definitely got it done for you. Great game by him. The only other relevant receiver was Dalton Schultz. 9 targets, caught 8 for 76 and a touchdown. Dalton Schultz remains. He had a couple down weeks, but for the most part, he has been almost as bankable as most tight ends go in PPR leagues. And so he's really hard to look past. All right, we're going to go over some more of this week's reactions after we take a short break. All right, everybody. Instant reaction number 4. The Broncos retain the number 1 seed in the AFC. They top the Packers. Broncos 34, Packers 26. The Broncos go to 12-2, up a game on the Patriots. The Patriots. Packers fall to 9-4-1 to push them back into the 7th seed. They'll play the Bears next week. All right, so in this game, Broncos side, Bo Nix has these games every now and again, and he had one there. 23 of 34, 303, and 4 touchdowns. Everything he did worked. Now, Micah Parsons left this game with a non-contact knee injury. It was in the second half. Nix had already done about half of his damage. So it wasn't that. Now, first half, you had to be frustrated if you were investing in the receivers because the touchdowns, little Jordan Humphrey and Michael Bandy. It was like, oh, great. But in the second half, Cortland Sutton got his 7 for $113 and a touchdown. With no Pat Bryant, Troy Franklin takes advantage, catch all 6 targets, 85 and a touchdown. If you emergency started Franklin, you definitely got a big one. Packers defense, just not playing well. Did not play well here. And I thought they played much better. They didn't. Denver had their number. Denver, as usual, the running game wasn't very efficient. R.J. Harvey, 19 for 64 with 2.5 yards a carry about. Did score a touchdown to get you bailed out late because he didn't catch a pass. But so he did get you 12 fantasy points, and that worked out. Otherwise, not much else going on here. Like I said, Franklin got the touchdown, big yards. Sutton did well. But a very, very good game by Denver, playing a very quality team, taking advantage of their home field advantage, and their defense definitely showed up, which brings us to the Packers. I remember Christian Watson did leave this game with a chest injury. There was an interception on a pass to him at one point. I saw there were times, again, watching 5 games and still doing the reports on the early ones, you see enough, but not enough. And so Watson, I know there's doubled on one downfield pass that Love threw, probably was ill-advised. So yeah, this is a tough one. Love has those ideas where here he's good against man coverage, but this isn't every team's man coverage. So it's a team that has a very higher level of cornerback play. So all that said, Josh Jacobs, and again, didn't see him on the field late. Didn't see a confirmation of an injury report, so I don't know what the deal is on him, but I know Chris Brooks played late and when they were in the hurry-up mode. Jacobs got enough done while he was there, but hopefully, again, he's healthy for next week. 12 carries for 73 yards, including a 40-yard touchdown. And then he caught a beautiful touchdown pass, 2 for 19 and a touchdown. He had a touchdown called back early. That may have been the drive he caught the touchdown pass, but he did get one called back. I can't remember if that was the same drive or not. It may or may not have been. Receiver-wise, well, I can start with the quarterback, Jordan Love, 24-40. Kind of unacceptable. I know Denver's a great defense, but 24-40, and I know they were trailing, and I know they had to go pass first and second half. I get it, but that is not working. 276, a touchdown, 2 picks. This is the game you worry about from Jordan Love. He got frantic. Now, Denver has a good pass rush, and so that's going to make a lot of quarterbacks struggle, but it's a bit of a problem. It's a bit of a problem, and because Jordan Love has these games, and that's what you worry about in the playoffs, especially if they don't when they were in line for that 1 seed, it would have been important because any game they don't have to play is a game where Jordan Love can't have that bad game. But they're there, and we saw it here. Now, Jaden Reed, 5 for 55 on 6 targets, continuing to use him enough, not enough, but enough to get you for fantasy. Matthew Golden came in with Watson out and caught 3 for 55, so he saw a little more usage there. So his usage could increase if Watson does miss time. Hopefully he does not. Watson, 3 for 29 on 5 targets. Musgrave, one of his better games, 4 for 52. I'm sure unless you were desperate, you didn't start him. But I'm overall not a banner effort for the Packers offense. All right, instant reaction number 5. I just got to give some props to the Jaguars who light up the scoreboard. Jaguars 48, Jets 20. Jaguars 10-4, Jets 3-11. I'm just going to briefly talk about Jacksonville here. I know it was the Jets. I know the Jets can't stop the pass, and I don't care. Trevor Lawrence threw for 330 and 5 touchdowns, and he ran for 51 yards and a touchdown. I did not rank him in my top 12 quarterbacks. I did not consider. I gave him an upside tag. I did give an upside tag, but I thought they would run the ball. They wouldn't have to throw a lot. They threw more than they ran, and Lawrence did amazingly well. Now, if you started ETN, the running game wasn't good. It's been inefficient, 12 for 32. But, man, Travis Etienne, all 3 of his passes got into the end zone. 3 for 73 and 3 touchdowns. So 3 touchdowns on 3 catches, 73 yards through the air. So over 100 scrimmage yards. Great game by Etienne. Doesn't matter how he gets it done. It's fantasy football. And at least Etienne showing us he has multiple paths there. Chase Tootin scored an early touchdown, but he only had 2 touches in the game. Brian Thomas, he showed up again. 4 for 66 and a touchdown, 7 targets. He had 87 yards last week. So he's showing signs of life. Jacoby Myers didn't get in the end zone, but 5 for 71. He continues to be a high floor player with some ceiling, but just big props to the Jacksonville offense. They played wonderfully. They earned this 10-4 record. They've been an inconsistent team all year. And I think the biggest thing I was impressed with was the fact that they didn't let down for an inferior opponent. All right, everybody, thanks to our sponsor, Prosper Trading, where you can stop gambling on games you can't control, start trading the markets you can. And thanks to everyone for listening. Come back next week for another edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast.